This week, the FDA is holding a formal hearing on BPC-157, and almost everything getting reported about it right now is wrong because it's mixing up three completely different laws that have nothing to do with each other. Give me 10 minutes and I'll walk you through what's actually happening, not the panic version. So let's get into what's actually happening this week. Here's the timeline because context is everything with this story. In 2023, the FDA put 19 peptides, BPC-157, TB500, CJC-1295, epimurelin, and a bunch of others onto something called the Category 2 list. That's a significant safety concerns bucket. And functionally, it cut off compounding pharmacies from being able to legally prepare these for patients. That's the year the clinical supply chain for these peptides basically disappeared overnight. Then, on February 27th of this year, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. went on the Joe Rogan podcast and announced that around 14 of those 19 peptides were expected to move back from Category 2 to Category 1, which would restore the pathway for compounding pharmacies to legally make them under prescription. In April, BPC-157 significantly got pulled off the Category 2 list. And that brings us to this week. The Pharmacy Compounding Advisory Committee, the PCAS, is scheduled to hold a formal hearing on July 23rd and 24th to review BPC-157 alongside KPV, MOTS-c, and TB500. Removed from the restricted list, and now the committee that actually makes the compounding call is about to meet. 4 completely distinct events, and headlines love to smash them into one. This is the part almost nobody explains correctly, so let's slow down on this one. There are 3 separate legal questions, and a peptide can have a different answer to each one at the same time. Question 1. Is it FDA approved as a drug? For BPC-157, the answer is no. It has never gone through phase 1, 2, and 3 trials and received a new drug application approval. That hasn't changed, and nothing happening this week changes it either. Question 2. Can a compounding pharmacy legally prepare it under Section 503A for an individual patient with a prescription? This is the question the PCAC hearing is actually about. Being removed from Category 2 in April was a necessary step toward yes, but it's not the same as yes, the committee still has to review safety and efficacy data and make a recommendation. Question 2. Can a compounding pharmacy legally prepare under Section 503A for an individual patient with a prescription? And this is the question the PCAC hearing is actually about. Being removed from Category 2 in April was a necessary step towards the yes, but it's not the same as a yes. The committee still has to review safety and efficacy data and make a recommendation. Question 3. Is it legally sold as a research chemical? This is the research use only label you see on basically every vial online. That label gives it 0 legal coverage for human use. It's a workaround for sellers, but not a shield. It doesn't matter what the sticker says. What matters is how the substance is classified and how it's actually being used. So here's the sentence that clears up 90% of the confusion. BPC-157 being removed from the FDA's restricted list is not the same as BPC-157 being legal to sell for human use. And it is definitely not the same as it being FDA approved. Those are three different doors. And right now, BPC-157 has only opened one of them. The compounding door is what's up for review this week, and the approval door hasn't even been touched. So practically, if you're someone currently using BPC-157 or thinking about it, what does this week's hearing change for you? Short answer, less than the headlines suggest, at least for now. It's still not an FDA-approved drug. It's still not something a compounding pharmacy can definitely make for you. That's literally what's being decided this week. And even a favorable PCAC recommendation doesn't mean instant availability. There's usually a formal rulemaking process that follows. If you're subject to drug testing for any reason, this doesn't change your risk at all. The World Anti-Doping Agency bans BPC-157 outright, no exception. And that's been true for years, regardless of what the FDA does domestically. Here's the honest read on enforcement, because people always ask me this. The FDA's enforcement attention is almost entirely aimed at the sellers. The labs mislabeling these as research chemicals while clearly marketing them for personal use, not as individual buyers. But rarely enforced against individuals is not the same sentence as legal. Those are two different facts, and conflating them is how people end up making decisions based on the false confidence. If this kind of breakdown, the actual regulatory mechanics instead of the panic headlines, is useful to you, that's basically the whole point of this channel. So, subscribing means you don't miss it when the PCAC actually publishes its recommendation, which could be any week now. And drop a comment with which peptide you want the same treatment on next. I'm reading every comment. So, what's the real signal to watch instead of doom scrolling regulatory Twitter? Three things. First, the PCAC's formal recommendation coming out of this week's hearing. That's the committee advice to the FDA, not a law by itself. Second, whether the FDA actually adopts the recommendation, and if so, on what timeline. Advisory committees get overruled or delayed more often than people assume. Third, watch what happens to the other three peptides in this same hearing: KPV, MOTS-c, and TB500. Because if all four move together, that tells you this is a category-wide policy shift, not a one-off decision specific to BPC-157's data. And there's a bigger pattern worth understanding. This isn't really a story about BPC-157. It's a test case for how the entire peptide category gets treated going forward. Cmax, Link, and GLP-1s, adjacent compounds, all of it. Whatever framework gets built this week for BPC-157 is very likely the template that gets reused for the next wave of peptides sitting in that same regulatory gray zone. If you only watch one peptide story this year, to understand where this whole space is headed, this is the one. Here's where I'll leave you. This is genuinely one of the more consequential weeks for peptide regulation in years. But consequential doesn't mean settled. Nothing announced so far makes BPC-157 an approved drug, and nothing makes it definitely formally legal for a pharmacy to compound for you yet. What changed is that the door to compounding legally is now being reviewed instead of closed. And that's meaningfully different from where things stood even 6 months ago. If you've got questions about your specific situation, what you're using, why, what the actual risk profile looks like for you, drop a comment below and I'll DM you directly. I read all of them, and honestly, some of the best video topics on the channel have come straight out of those conversations. I'll be back with an update the moment the PCAC recommendation actually publishes. I'll talk to you guys soon.